Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Clackamas County Commissioners on May 10, 2022 for County Administrator Issues and Updates. Gary Schmidt, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. We'll start with the Water Environment Services Board. Chair, if you'd please convene as that board.
I will recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as the Water Environment Services for the next items.
Thank you, Chair. This is a request for consent agenda for the Water Environment Services Board. First, approval of a low-income household water assistance program agreement with Clackamas County for reimbursement of wastewater services billing on behalf of eligible low-income households. The agreement value is not to exceed $840,019, subject to further appropriations. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Housing and Community Services. No county general funds are involved. Greg Geist is the Director of Water Environment Services. Go ahead.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Chair Smith and Commissioners. This is a companion agreement to one that you're going to see on the H3S agenda. Basically, this is a couple pots of federal money that have been funneled through the state, ultimately to the county, and what this agreement allows is for WES to ultimately receive funding for forgiveness for past due accounts, late fees, things like that. So we're working in partnership with H3S to identify low-income folks that are in distress, and we'll be able to tap this federal money to give them relief on their bill.
Interesting.
And it's a very complementary to, we don't currently have the ability to do that. We can suspend late fees and not certify accounts, which we did through the pandemic, but that direct assistance is not something we can currently provide. We have a program where if they meet a certain threshold, we can lower their bill by 50%, which is nice. But that's not always possible, and people get into trouble, so this will give us another avenue.
Interesting. Any questions or comments for the presenter? Yeah, Mark.
So how do you determine who in your service district is eligible?
Well, so there's criteria that the federal government uses, and that's 60% of, it's in the staff report, 60% of median household income for that area. And we have a threshold for our low-income discount program, which is 185% of federal poverty level. This 60% number is actually more permissive than our current number for our low-income discount program. But yeah, we're going to be working with H3S to identify people. We're going to look at the folks that are in arrears and examine them, connect them with H3S. We're going to advertise this through social media, our website, billing inserts, things like that.
Okay, good.
And I should add that we're not alone in this. Clackamas River Water and Oak Lodge Water Services, and I think Canby are also going to be participating in this and working with H3S to come up with ways to find these people.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any objections? Seeing none.
Item 2, approval of a board order authorizing purchase of standby diesel and natural gas generator and load bank to provide backup power to designated buildings at the Tri-City Water Resource Recovery Facility, and delegating limited authority to the county administrator and the Department of Finance to complete this purchase. The contract value is $173,271. Funding is through the Water Environment Services capital funds. No county general funds are involved.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, so this is a cooperative agreement. When the laboratory facility down at our Tri-City plant was constructed in the mid-90s, there was not backup power provided. We learned that, well, we didn't learn that, but we suffered that during the ice storm, and so we're trying to rectify that. And again, this is a cooperative agreement. It's over $150,000, so it needs to go to the board to install a permanent generator. And so this contract would go from permitting to installation to startup and plus the equipment.
Interesting.
So I have a question.
Yep.
So how many backup generators are at the Tri-Cities facility?
Well, we have the dispatchable power, the PGE unit, and then we have 2 independent legs that come into that facility. So really only one backup generator.
Okay,
And
yeah,
it
'cause I know
doesn't-
there's power, you're right, there's power that comes in from 2 different sources. So that, when that backup comes on, that's not running the entire facility?
No,
Okay,
most of it, but not all of it, and not the lab. And we did look into, well, what, can't we just connect the lab up to the backup power that's there? And it's much more expensive, unfortunately, than installing this generator.
Any other comments or questions on this? Hearing none. Any objections? Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll put this on this Thursday's business meeting agendas with your approval, Commissioners.
I will now recess as the Water and Environment Services and reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners.
And with your permission, we'll put those on this Thursday's consent agenda, Commissioners? Yes? No? Yes?
Yep.
Great, thank you. All right, now regular consent agenda, Sheriff's Office first. Requesting approval of an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office and the Oregon Department of Transportation to increase the reimbursement percentage and reduce the matching fund requirement on the Oregon Motor Carrier Safety Action Plan. The amendment reduces the county's matching obligation from $3,747.50 to $1,250 and increases the reimbursement amount from $21,252.50 to $23,750. The agreement value remains, though, at $25,000. Funding is through budgeted county general funds. Mike Marasco from the Sheriff's Office will present. Go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. The Oregon Department of Transportation approached the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office with this amendment, reducing the match from 14.99% to 5%. That amounts to $2,497.50 that will be reduced in match, and they will also be increasing the reimbursement by that same amount, $2,497.50 for this agreement. This project is for our Motor Carrier Safety Action Plan, which inspects commercial motor vehicles to reduce fatalities and accidents caused by those types of vehicles.
Commissioner Fisher.
So what is the reason for the reduction?
I do not have that information on me, Commissioner Fisher, but I can get that from our sergeant who got the IGA amendment.
I'm all for us paying less money. I just am interested in how this works.
Yeah, no, I apologize. I kind of got thrown into the meeting at the last minute, so I'll
Last
get that
minute,
for you.
okay. So you're here like, oh, no.
I do not want to hold this up for my question, please, but I am interested in how these things work.
Any other comments, Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, I had a different question, but there's not much in the packet here to discern or answer my question. That is that I see that it reduces our obligation, which is great, but does it reduce the actual program?
No, the program, so it's a $25,000 agreement, and so it's basically reducing the match, and then it's going to increase our amount. So it's $25,000 in total that the county will be participating in. We'll be using overtime for the program and doing those inspections, and so we will provide $25,000 in overtime and getting reimbursed for $23,750 of that.
Okay, and maybe you can answer this question, the follow-up to that, as far as the metrics for the results of the work that are done, is that more of an obligation for the state, or is that still part of our MFR for us?
So on this grant, we do provide in our reimbursement package the number of qualifying safety stops that were performed, and also they actually provide the citations that were issued to the state for that. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Commissioner, but that's what we do provide the state as far as our data requirements.
Yeah, my question is more about the effectiveness of it, is, another time. Yeah, no worries.
Thank you. Any objections to this moving forward? Seeing none.
All right, thanks, Mike. Could you get that question and mail it to the entire board before Thursday, please? Thank you. All right, next, Department of Finance, approval of a resolution acknowledging expenditures in excess of appropriations and describing corrective action in accordance with ORS 297.466 and the omission of a major fund, both of which occurred in fiscal year 2021. The excess expenditures totaled $299,928. Funded through a grant to the Department of Health, Housing, and Human Services. No county general funds are involved. This is a report from the county's audit, which Elizabeth's going to explain right now. Elizabeth Comfort, Director of Finance. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Commissioners and Chair Smith. This is the result coming to you from the audit that we just had completing fiscal year 2019-20. And the resolution needs to be approved by our Board of Commissioners for a formal response to our Secretary of State for the state of Oregon, responding to both of these issues in a formal letter with how we're going to correct them going forward. So as Gary mentioned, the first one was a budget appropriation. It was over the budget adopted amount by $299,928. And going forward, we have an upgrade in our PeopleSoft software to have a checkpoint, a threshold. And so now if any dollars being paid out or attempted with an invoice will be stopped if it exceeds the budget appropriation. And so that is a good measure. Technology is on our side there. The second omission is the major fund. We add additional emergency rental federal assistance dollars in the health centers, or excuse me, social services. And those typically we do not have, and so social services has not risen to be a large fund when we have to identify our major funds in our audit reporting. And a major fund is if it's over 5% of the total of all of our appropriated dollars. And so to resolve that going forward, we will have double checks within our own accounting systems as well as rely on any consultants that we use to help us to put together our work papers. And we will do that prior to submitting our financials to the auditors.
And so our auditors found this. I think as it was presented to our audit committee, there's 2 columns. Now, this is really my very limited information. It was reported in a non-major fund category, and it was supposed to have been reported in a major fund category. It was reported, it just wasn't on the right line item.
That is correct. It was
Okay.
still reported, but not called out as a major fund for the county.
Thank you for that. Any other questions for the presenter on this?
And I think I said that.
Any objections to this moving forward? Seeing none.
So I have a comment, Chair. So this is something we have to bring before you for state budget law. There were 2 errors, that's my words, errors that were not purposeful. I investigated, which was also part of budget law, to make sure this wasn't willful, malicious, evil intent. There was no intent behind this. There was no official wrongdoing other than it was an error, which Elizabeth has explained ways we will prevent the error from occurring again. I do want to comment, we used to have 5 to 10 omissions or issues every year, as you know, and we're down to 2, which is pretty good. It should be 0, but we're down to 2, so we're moving in the right direction. Thank you to Elizabeth and her staff.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, so Gary, isn't it, oh, sorry, Chair Smith,
It's okay, go ahead.
that's just part of the process, is to do the audit, to review everything, to make sure that we are doing things correctly and to make those corrections.
That is correct, yes.
So that is the success, even though there
Yes.
was something that we
Well
found.
said, yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Yep, great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, Health, Housing, Human Services. Item 1, approval of a low-income household water assistance program agreement with Water Environment Services for payment of wastewater services billing on behalf of eligible low-income households. The agreement value is not to exceed $840,019, subject to further appropriations. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Housing and Community Services. No county general funds are involved. You already heard the companion piece of this from Wes. Now this is the county side on H3S. Rod Cook's the Director of Health, Housing, Human Services. Go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. Approval of this agreement with WES that will allow Clackamas County Social Services to assist eligible low-income households by making payments for wastewater removal costs on behalf of the household. And you heard the rest of the story from Greg.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for the presenter? Any objections? Seeing none.
Item 2, approval of a low-income household water assistance program agreement with the City of Molalla for payment of water and wastewater services billing on behalf of eligible low-income households. Agreement value not to exceed $840,019, subject to further appropriations. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Housing and Community Services. No county general funds are involved.
Yeah, this is the same type of agreement, but this time with the City of Molalla for people who are living in Molalla.
Any questions?
Does this include septic tanks?
What's that?
Does this include relief for septic tank expenses?
This one is drinking water and wastewater. I'm not sure about septic tank. Is there anybody?
He doesn't know. Oh, Brenda Durbin, would you come forward?
Brenda
and
Durbin from Social Services.
Please introduce.
It's for municipal water suppliers and wastewater only.
Okay. So the agency, I'm looking ahead a little bit, the agency that's not on here, that's got a lot of customers in some low-income areas is Clackamas River Water.
Yes, so we intend to have 8 agreements. We have about, I think, 4 of them on the board today. We're in the process of approving the others. I don't have off the top of my head the water systems that we are working with. These funds are going to help us serve about 10% of the families in need. So we've done an analysis of the water districts that serve the highest number of lower income households and those with the highest percentages of arrearages. So we're focusing on a small number of water providers, focused on those providers that serve households that meet the eligibility requirements for these funds.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any objections to this moving forward? Seeing none.
Item 3, approval of a low-income household water assistance program agreement with Oak Lodge Water Services for payment of water and wastewater services billing on behalf of eligible low-income households. Agreement value not to exceed $840,019, subject to further appropriations. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Housing and Community Services. No county general funds are involved.
Same type of agreement, but with Oak Lodge Water Services, and this is drinking and wastewater removal.
Any questions or comments? Any objections? Seeing none.
Item 4, approval of an amendment to a federal subrecipient grant agreement with the Father's Heart Street Ministry for services to continue the non-congregate hotel shelter program. The amendment value is $124,717. The additional amendment value is $124,717 for a new total grant value of $558,082. Funding is through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Oregon Department of Housing and Community Services. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, and what the administrator said, this is amendment number 4 is for the Father's Heart Street Ministry. Will continue to provide shelter support services to individuals and households housed in our hotel-based shelter program.
Any questions or comments? Any objections? Seeing none.
Item 5, approval of a non-federal subrecipient grant agreement with Zor Evangelical Lutheran Church to provide warming center services. Total grant value is $55,005. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Housing and Community Services. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, and to reiterate, approval of agreement to provide overnight warming center services to unhoused individuals in Clackamas County during periods of extreme cold. And this is at Zor Lutheran.
Is this located in Canby? Yes, it is. I thought so. Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Objections? Seeing none.
Item 6, approval of an amendment to the 2022 intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Health Authority for the operation and financing of community mental health, addiction treatment, recovery and prevention services, and problem gambling programs. The amendment value is $501,856.35. The new total agreement value is $9,584,419.14. Funding is through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this agreement provides funding for the local administration and operation of behavioral health and addiction program services for residents of Clackamas County.
Great. Any questions or comments? Any objections? Seeing none.
All right, thank you, Rod. Next, county administration. Item 1, approval of a contract with United Protection Service doing business as Allied Universal Security Services for armed guard services at designated board meetings. Contract is not to exceed $25,000. Funding is through budgeted county general funds. Caroline Hill, are you presenting this one? Who's presenting this one? You?
I'm presenting the USDA one.
All right, who's presenting this one?
Not me.
All right, surprise, I'll do it. So commissioners, you authorize this. We're going to have armed security and board business meetings at your Thursday business meetings, and it can start as soon as next week. We just need to finalize the contract. The cost for the rest of this calendar year is $25,000 not to exceed. Seeking your
Gary,
approval.
this amount is $25,000. Why are we considering this? You have signing authority to do this amount.
Oh. That's a good question. Stephen, are you here?
I'm here.
Why is this going to the board and not just me?
You can sign it. I don't know.
I don't know. I apologize, commissioners. I could have just signed this. I'm going to sign this unless you have a concern.
Nope, no objections.
All right, I'll take care of it. Thank you. Item 2, approval of a fiscal year 2022-2023 work and financial plan with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Wildlife Services for predator management. Agreement not to exceed $125,049.16. $87,854.60 is funded through county general funds. $37,194.56 is funded through state and federal funds. Caroline Hill, policy advisor, will give a quick update.
Actually, I'm just here to introduce our guests. They are Brian Thomas and Kevin Christensen from USDA, and they'll be able to speak to this program.
Welcome, gentlemen. Please come forward and state your names and who you represent.
So I'm Kevin Christensen with USDA Wildlife Services. I'm the Assistant State Director for the program here in Oregon.
I'm Brian Thomas, Northwest District Supervisor for the USDA Wildlife Services Program. I'm based in Salem, Oregon.
Go ahead.
So thank you very much. This is probably the agreement that we have with Clackamas County is probably one of the longest standing agreements of all of our counties in Oregon since the early 1900s. It has certainly diversified over the years, protecting a lot of range of resources and helping individual property owners and landowners to find integrated solutions to be able to resolve wildlife conflicts. So this program is a cooperative with state and federal dollars to be able to help individuals find solutions to whether it's conflicts with livestock or whether that's pets being impacted by other wildlife.
Any questions, comments for the presenters on this? Commissioner Scholl.
Can you tell us the extent of the problem that Clackamas County has with predator control, and are these funds adequate to support that?
Good question, Commissioner. I would say it is adequate for the services that we can provide. We are kind of cooperative between a lot of other entities. There's private businesses that we try not to compete with, and we allow individuals to choose and select them. We work directly in supporting ODFNW and their efforts, as well as working with rehabilitators and other entities. I think the county is very wise and judicious with the funds that they provide for the agreement, and I think we can provide a pretty comprehensive program with the funds that we do get.
And so these funds are used to contract agencies to actually deal with predators?
So the funds are going to be utilized for wildlife services. It's just a federal contract so that our employees, we just had an employee retire after about 30 years of working in Clackamas County, and so we're onboarding a new employee in the next couple of weeks. And so we'll have a full-time employee that's staffed and works in Clackamas County that services the needs of the county.
Okay, thank you.
Any other further questions? Any objections to this moving forward? Seeing none, thank you for coming forward today.
Thank you for your time.
Next, Transportation and Development, approval of a contract with S2 Contractors for the Salmonberry Drive paving project. Contract value is $201,630. Funding is through the County Road Fund. No county general funds are involved. Jan Johnson is the Director of Transportation and Development. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Salmonberry paving project will resurface approximately 0.3 miles of local roads. This paving contract will resurface Salmonberry Drive between South End Road and the end of county-maintained, as well as Columbine Court with asphalt. Basically, this will preserve the base of this particular roadway. This project was advertised in accordance with ORS and LCRB rules on March 8th, 2022. Bids are publicly open on March 31st, 2022. After review of the bids, S2 Contractors Incorporated was determined to be the lowest responsive bidder. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any comments, questions, objections to this moving forward? Seeing none.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next, Technology Services. Item 1, approval of an amendment to a service level agreement with Clackamas County Fire District Number 1 to include a new dark fiber lease on the Clackamas Broadband Exchange. The amendment value is $3,060 annually. Total annual agreement value is now $12,180. Funding is through the reimbursement by the Clackamas County Fire District Number 1. No county general funds are involved. Dave DeVore is Director of Technology Services. Duke Dexter runs Clackamas Broadband Exchange. Go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chair Smith. Pretty straightforward SLA with basically changing our current SLA with CCFD1 to extend our broadband fiber to connect up Gladstone. And it will increase the annual rate by about $3,000. The reason we're bringing it to you is because the potential length means it could go over $150,000 to the extent. So we want to make sure we cover our bases.
Any questions or comments? Any objections to this moving forward? Seeing none.
Item 2, approval of a service level agreement with the Oregon Trail School District for dark fiber leases on the Clackamas Broadband Exchange. The annual value of the agreement is $18,360. Funding is through reimbursement by the Oregon Trail School District. No county general funds are involved.
This is a new SLA with the Oregon Trail to connect up to 6 of their locations for an annual of $18,360. It's a 10-year lease, so therefore it's over $150,000, so we want to make sure we cover it. This will then allow them to be on the network along with the rest of the other school districts.
Great. Any questions, comments? Any objections to moving this forward? Seeing none.
Thank you very much. That ends the consent agenda request. All of these will be on this Thursday's business meeting. Next item, Land Bank Authority update. There was a memo in your packet. Sarah Ekman, Director of Business and Community Services. Go ahead, please.
Welcome, Sarah. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt. My name is Sarah Ekman. I'm the Interim Director with Business and Community Services. Economic Development is part of our department. And in February, we came before you to seek direction on the future of the establishment of a potential land bank authority in Clackamas County. Our direction was to pause that for 1 year. Our funding package for this project does include $300,000 from Business Oregon through a grant that's as a forgivable loan. So we did follow up with the state. They are willing to extend our agreement with them until February of 2023 if we were to revisit it and provide a final determination of the future of the project. So our options on the table are to either extend with them and process that, which would be in the form of a letter that staff could prepare and bring forward for chair signature, or we can stop the agreement at this point and return the funding to the state. So we're here to seek your direction.
So explain to me how the land bank works.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, $300,000, to me, that would be just barely scratching the surface for staff time. And then are we supposed to go out and find what kind of land?
Yes, so the land bank is structured to bring in lands that have real or perceived contamination so that the Land Bank Authority can remediate the risks associated with those properties and then return them to the tax rolls for higher and better use. So that's the ultimate purpose. The $300,000 that's budgeted through the grant is to fund a certain set of deliverables which help us on our track, down the road to establish this. And our early budgets do include costs to hire staff, to establish a board of directors and go through that process. And ultimately, acquisition of properties is something that would come as the land bank is established and moving forward.
The remediation of these properties is very expensive. So let's say we spend the $300,000, we have the deliverables to the state, we identify what properties need to be cleaned up, and then where does the money come from to clean up those properties?
We have to go out and find that money.
So it's not state money?
There's a wide variety of money available through programs that have to be applied for. So in our Land Bank Authority business plan that was developed, 2019, I believe, we have a series of different grants that staff would go out and seek to be able to support the program. There's not a bucket of money that we initially have access to, other than that what we provide or provide through programs like this.
And would we have to add any additional FTE for this, and what department would this be funded through?
There are plans, positions that exist. It's 1.5 FTE. Traditionally, this program lives within the Economic Development Office. And I'm looking over at Administrator Schmidt. I assume that would remain the same.
Stay in economic development, yes.
It will. So it would go to the Office of Economic Development, which will be under county administration.
Okay. I have a couple commissioners, several. Oh, Gary, your light's on, please.
Yeah, this is an unfunded mandate, Commissioners, which is part of the reason why you agreed to delay this. I recommend you return the funds to the state. We can ask for it again in a year if the board at that time agrees to move forward on this.
I would agree. I think this is very expensive. It's not part of our 10 goals that we've identified moving forward. Yeah, it'd be wonderful if we could take some of these really polluted lands, return them back to a condition that can be used. But the remediation on that takes years. I'm very familiar with some of it that's happened in the Molalla area. And I don't know if that's something we want to bite off. We have other commissioners in the queue. Martha Schrader, you're up first.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah, for this, because I know that this was something we were interested in. And what I recall is that under the auspice of economic development, Renata Mengelberg, for example, comes to mind. We actually had an active brownfield program. Is that correct?
I am not familiar with that. It was prior to my time. I'd have to investigate for you.
Okay, so we did at one point, I do remember this, when Renata was part of our economic development program. She was designated as one of the staff people to actively look at brownfield locations and go ahead and find the dollars for remediation. And that was actually a piece of what we had done in economic development. I will go along with giving the money back, but I do want to remind my colleagues here and economic development that as we rebuild our program, this should be part of it, because we actually did remediation. We located business on remediated lands. We also relocated businesses on greenfields, which is obviously land that was employment land that didn't need that kind of remediation. I understand the timing isn't right now, correct? Because that level of staffing that we had at that time is no longer there. But I have to tell you, if it was there, this would be a very useful tool for us to have. There are federal grants and there are state grants and there are other opportunities for dollars out there that at the time we actively went after. And the land bank essentially would give us a whole board that would actually, under the umbrella of economic development, that would actually kind of move that forward. And we would be the first county in the state to do that. So
no other counties, excuse me for interrupting.
No, that's
you make
right.
the
No.
point. No other counties are doing this.
No other counties are doing this, but we've always been, at the time, our economic development department was the best in the state, okay? And they did do that. So I would say I will be okay to give it back, but I would like to remind us that this was part of our, a big part of our program.
Gary, maybe when the economic development portion gets more established and they identify areas of economic development, I think it's up to them to bring it back to us to see if this is a viable program we want to get into. If they have the bandwidth to go out and apply for these monies, and like you say, some have been identified, some lands and so forth. Of course, we're not the only jurisdiction in Clackamas County that could be doing that. Cities have this available to them also. We have a couple more commissioners in the queue. Commissioner Savas, you're up next.
Yeah, I appreciate the vein of the discussion here and that. Practically speaking, my concern is that the $300,000 is not very much money to go very far. So if the state was serious in this, or business, in pursuit of flipping those properties, Business Oregon, it would be, more seriously or substantially funded to give us, enough funds to actually make something happen. But $300,000 and 1.5 FTE, that doesn't really last very long, and I'm just concerned that it really comes almost a bridge, or you're building a ramp, and then funding stops, and we're left with nothing, and it essentially becomes another unfunded mandate. Mm-hmm. So I won't say a mandate, but it's really unfunded, and we can't afford to backfill it. I don't think we have the capacity right now to actually staff it even. So I'm all for putting this aside, and unless the state wants to get serious and put more money behind it.
Thank you. Commissioner Fisher.
What would be the plan for continuing the program after the $300,000 ran out?
We have a funding package that was initially presented that's still the plan, which includes a portion of lottery dollars. It includes grant funding, and then it does include, aggressively seeking those opportunities that are being mentioned here between state and federal opportunities and, potential other partnerships. But a lot of that would be explored by the folks who would be hired to perform that function.
So I guess my concern, and we have had as part of our strategic performance Clackamas employment lands, which is a huge need in Clackamas County. Huge need, probably more of a need here than other parts of the state, because we are very land constricted for when we have employers that want to expand or employers that want to come here for good paying jobs. We are challenged in what we have to offer them. So in my mind, and if I'm missing something, tell me, but this is a seed opportunity to help us build a program of which we would look for other non-county general fund resources to continue the Land Bank Authority. I guess I'm looking for, is that true?
That's the intent behind the project, yes, is to, build it, start it at the county level. The ultimate goal and plan for this is to spin it off once it was established, and it would become its own entity separate from the county, but the startup role lies within the county.
Yeah, I guess I don't see the rationale in sending the money back and not just starting it if there is a plan to use non-county general fund dollars to sustain it and to spin it off. We need this in Clackamas County. We need to repair lands that are polluted, so we have more available for our economic vitality.
Okay, Commissioner Scholl, you're up.
This county does not need to be increasing our bureaucracy and the cost to run the county. This looks to me like a enticing $300,000, but there's no no guarantee that if we started this in a year or two that we'd be successful at it. This is an unfunded mandate, and I don't think we should proceed with it.
Thank you, Commissioner Savas, and then Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, actually, probably a few years ago, Metro got some monies on it, set up a brownfield program, and I was the county's representative on that, and so I participated in that, and it just withered away, so to speak, and I think maybe that there were a couple properties that got awarded some grants from the state, but I thought that if the state was getting serious about continuing the work after spending all that money to identify properties, that it would have been something that would have stood on its own, and it just kind of withered away. I don't know what the status of that program is, but I haven't been asked for to attend another meeting, nor was I ever even notified that, that the last meeting would be the last meeting. So.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, it was public monies, I guess, sure, lottery monies, whatever it may be. I'm not sure if that was a source for this Metro things, but I've seen efforts like this. I think they're well-intended, but they're not well-funded. That's my point here today, that $300,000 doesn't go very far. The state needs to make a more serious commitment if they want to do that.
We have two more commissioners, and then I'll follow it up. Commissioner Schrader, I think.
Yeah, I will. So I understand what Commissioner Fisher is saying. I mean, really, truly, we were successful at it, and we did do it, and we did it regularly. And to be honest, we did get dollars from the federal government through our work with the Legacy Project. I don't know if people are aware of that down there we did, because that is, again, a blighted site. But I do think my issue right now is the timing isn't right. I think it's something that as we reorganize economic development under the administration, this should be something we discuss as a significant tool in the toolbox, because I do think that it works. But right now, timing isn't right. $300,000 is, quite frankly, a pittance. I would like to see something like this move ahead in the future, where we can work more closely with the state and insist on a little more money if we want to move ahead with a land bank authority.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding. This is not a mandate. We've heard that twice from two commissioners. My understanding is it's an opportunity with some seed money from the state to have us establish a land bank authority. Am I correct in that assumption?
That is correct, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
just want to make sure everybody knows this isn't a mandate. And I guess I have a question for Commissioner Schrader. Since we're recovering from a pandemic with needing to incentivize economic development, have more lands available, recover better than we were potentially during the pandemic, how is this not the right time to begin the process of building this process for Clackamas County?
Well, it's premature, Commissioner Fisher. We have to rebuild the staff. We have to have a discussion of what we are going to do for expertise for land acquisition, whether or not it includes brownfields or just greenfields. We also need to prioritize and take another extensive look on the sectors that we have here, and that we need to focus on expansion and retention, and then recruitment. So those functions really, because through no one's fault of their own, we've had a number of staff leave. Mr. Lagarja isn't here anymore. Catherine left. Like I said, Rick Gruen is no longer here, who did all the agriculture piece and cross-laminated timber. We really need to be focusing under the umbrella of administration how that's going to look. And right now, we're not at that point. It doesn't mean that we won't use this tool. At this point, I don't see we're not even ready to execute what we have if we even got $300,000.
Okay, Commissioners, let's
So
be
that's-
brief. We're going to move this
that's what
along.
I'm- that's
Your
what I'm
final
saying.
statement, Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, I just wanting to understand, so Sarah, is that, I mean, what Commissioner Schrader says is really important to understand. Is it true that we don't have the infrastructure within our staff to accept this $300,000 and begin the process of creating a land bank authority?
I mean, yes, we're in the process of rebuilding the economic development program. We have had vacancies, we've had turnover, and there's quite a lot of work that goes into this. It's a great opportunity to, bring lands, yes, but there is a lot of work that needs to happen, and we're in a pivotal time with economic development, reestablishing full staffing for the program, transitioning to the Office of Economic Development under county administration, and, this will require a great amount of focus and effort for folks to do, and it has huge potential, most certainly, but it does take a lot, and we would have to go out and seek those funding sources. We could accomplish the goals in this $300,000 with outside, consultant help. Some of it is to develop some more documentation, a guidebook, those kinds of things, and so, there's those options. But to build this program takes a lot. And so to be reestablished and have a fully staffed team with some momentum moving forward for a project like this would be very helpful.
Okay, so your opinion is that now is not the time to proceed with this. It's better to turn the money back, create stability within our administration, and then revisit it.
I think, I do think that doing this at a future date, we would be better positioned. Yes, yes.
Well, that's what I needed to understand.
Okay, Commissioners, we've already decided to postpone this once before, and what we need to make a decision on today is to return the money. That's all we need to do. Now, talking with the Grand Ronde Tribe, they're experiencing huge mitigation efforts down at the old Blue Heron mill site. I talked to John George last week when they visited us, and they've already set aside tens of millions of dollars to do that. Plus, they have an EPA grant to help them do that, and they don't know if that will even be enough, just on that one site. Can you imagine if we go out and identify lands who are not subject to water running through them and swishing a lot of pollution down the river, as what's happened in this site, just soil, compact soil of leaching into the ground. Let's give our economic opportunity folks a chance to develop a program with our input, of course. We will meet, we will decide how they want to proceed on that. And with that in mind, I will accept a motion to return the $300,000 to the state of Oregon, and we will take this up at a later day.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Scholl has made the motion to return the $300,000, and Commissioner Savas has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, would you please call the poll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Commissioners, very much. What's
Thank
up
you,
next?
Sarah. Next, abandoned recreational vehicles update. Scott Seco from the County Counsel's Office, Captain Brad O'Neill from the Sheriff's Office. There's a memo in your packet. This is an informational update only, Commissioners. We're not asking you to make a decision today, but we want to show you the progress we've made. Internally, go ahead, please, Scott.
Welcome.
Good morning.
Introduce yourselves, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. Scott Seco with County Council.
And Captain Brad O'Neill, Clackamas County Sheriff's Office.
And as Administrator Schmidt already indicated, we are here to talk about the issue of abandoned RVs throughout Clackamas County. We did submit a memorandum here just to bring you up to date on what is currently going on in order to deal with this problem. The problem seems to be growing. If you had a chance to look at the map showing the distribution of abandoned RVs throughout the county, it's actually quite evenly distributed throughout urban and rural areas. I know, at least anecdotally, recently we've been getting a lot of complaints from folks in rural areas, which is relatively new, whereas previously most of the abandoned RVs were in the more urban areas. We are here today to tell you, though, what we are doing to address that, and so far, what I can tell you is that there is not a formal process in place. That's not to say that work isn't being done. We have staff from a number of different departments. The Clackamas County Sheriff's Office is involved, County Council, Code Enforcement, DTD, Transportation, and H3S are all working together. When we learn of one of these RVs, we're tracking them, we're making a decision about whether or not the RV is subject to tow. And really what it comes down to at this point is dollars. As you know, these RVs are expensive to tow, and they're even more expensive to dispose of, because once we tow them, they're not going to be reclaimed because they're abandoned, and then we've got to pay to have them properly dismantled. And we're looking at a total cost of towing and dismantling of anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000 to $9,000 per RV. Currently, we have about 30 RVs that we know about abandoned throughout the county. And so just for rounding purposes, if you round up to $10,000 per RV, that would be obviously around $300,000 to deal with. We have identified presently approximately $75,000 to deal with the problem. We've towed 7 or 8 RVs in the last year alone, but that has eaten up the vast majority of the money that we've found. So we are looking for more funds. Right now, code enforcement is applying for a grant from Metro of $200,000. If we get that, that's going to go a long way in addressing this problem. The sheriff's office is will continue to be available and will continue to be kind of the boots on the ground, so to speak, to identify and inspect these. But again, until we find a more permanent, renewable source of funding, this is going to be something where we're playing catch up, and we are only able to tow. Really, the RVs we're focusing on are the ones that are posing an immediate hazard. Oftentimes, these are left in places where they create a sight hazard, sight line obstruction, or they're hanging out onto active roadways, and those are the ones we're targeting now. So if we find an RV that's abandoned, that's ugly, that's burned out, but it's off the road, and it's not doing anything more than causing an eyesore, we're probably not towing it at this point, and that's just the reality of the funding issues that we're facing. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, as I'm sure Captain O'Neill is.
Captain O'Neill, do you have anything to say today?
The only thing I can say is that the sheriff's office definitely doesn't have the budget to keep up with the towing and dismantling of these RVs. However, we do have the people that can actually make it happen. With the correct funding and direction on what we are available to take care of, we have the process in place to deal with that.
I have a couple commissioners who want to speak on this. Obviously, we all probably will. Do we have a place to tow these and dismantle them?
Yes, we do. We have a contract. What's the name of that company? Do you remember?
The company, so the tow, the sheriff's office has a number of different companies that will tow. They have basically a rotation for different vehicles. The tow companies will all take these as long as they will get paid for them. So
That's not my question. I know about that. Once they have the abandoned RVs, what do they do with them? They have to be dismantled and destroyed, correct? Do we have,
Yes.
Does somebody have the facilities to do that?
yeah, the company that we have a contract with is called BioClean, and they dismantle. They're the only company that we found in this area that is certified by the state to actually dismantle these. They often have a lot of hazardous waste in them, and so there's a certain process that needs to be followed in dismantling.
I have several more questions, but you know, my light panel is like a Christmas tree, and I'm not sure who is in first. Who wants to go first? Mr. Scholl.
If we had $300,000 today to take care of these vehicles, next week we'd have more. So in order to preclude Clackamas County from becoming the dump site, for those people who have an RV they cannot sell, they cannot give away, they cannot afford to dispose of themselves, in order to keep this county from becoming let's just take it out there on a late night, one-way trip to Clackamas County. So the better we handle this, the more problems potentially we can have. Because I know traveling around the state, there's many rural farms out there here and there. They have 2 or 3 or 4 old motorhomes that are there because there's no way to get rid of them. So my question is for Captain O'Neill. Does the Sheriff's Department have the capability to identify ownership of these derelicts and then proceed with prosecution so that if somebody out there has got an RV that they might think they'll take to Clackamas County, they can think twice about it.
So it's very challenging when it comes to that. Not everybody follows the letter of the law as far as registering a new vehicle when they purchase it. A lot of these are, when we start asking, well, where did you get this? Oh, I got it from Joe. What's Joe's name? Well, I have no idea who Joe is or where to find him. So a lot of these abandoned RVs are dead trails for us as far as not being able to figure out who's actually responsible for these vehicles.
But isn't there a VIN number?
There is, but that's only as good as the people who are selling and buying, updating that information through DMV.
Oh, that's bad news.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We have actually, I apologize.
Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, I had the same line of thinking as Commissioner Scholl on this, and I've talked to staff a couple, 3 years ago when these RVs start first popping up, and I thought that we ought to be pursuing the last titled owner, and, they have a responsibility in the state of Oregon to, within, I think, 10 days to submit a change of registration that you sold the vehicle and you mail DMV. I do that. I do that when I sell my vehicles. And really that fee or fine, if they are found abandoned, and that cost could be transferred to them. Now, granted, there'd be a lot of pursuit of that. It'd be a lot of dollars spent. Legal counsel's office probably be busy chasing down all that wouldn't be pretty. But there's also, products in the country or states in the country who have certain items, like the state of California has when you buy a new set of tires, you pay a disposal fee up front. And the idea about that is that disposal fee funds the tires, the disposal of the tires that are left abandoned and so forth. So we need to do something statewide because, you're right. If we start doing this and we start paying with taxpayer dollars for these RVs that are not properly handled or transferred, we're going to be the go-to place for these to be, just drop it off in Clackamas County. Just take it to the county line and drop it there. And that'll be a burden to our taxpayers. But the fact that these are there now are already a burden, so it's not safe. There are safety issues. So I can see I can see the immediate need, but I have the same concern. I want to see these removed, but I don't know what we do. One of those two options, either pursuing the last title owner with the VIN number and or appealing to the state to maybe possibly have a disposal fee built into the sale of new RVs, which would have to be a statewide initiative, similar to what tires do in the state of California.
Thank you. Commissioner Fisher.
I'm not up.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so in this memo, you've identified 4 departments that are working on this, and this is why it's costing so much. We have the sheriff's office initially, I assume, gets the call. Then we have to bring in, where's the money going to? We have the Department of Transportation. We have Water and Environment Services, who also has a fund. And we have BC Administration with our legal department. That's why Scott is here to do this. So it does take quite an effort. I assume there's going to be a central contact information number established, and you folks will have a plan put together to dispose of these RVs, correct?
That's absolutely what
What we're moving towards.
That's what you're working toward. Yes, thank you very much. I knew you were. So that's going to be something that I know our citizens want. Our citizens have said, get these off our streets. They're tired of seeing them. They want us to spend the money on them. So we're going to spend the money on them. I would recommend that all 30 that are identified, as you have, we try to take care of those. We'll continue the program and we'll review it periodically, I assume, going forward. I do want to make a note, make mention, there's a note in the memo that says this is the abandoned RVs, not occupied RVs, which may be parked illegally around and look really bad where somebody may be living in them. That's a whole different opportunity, let's put it that way, for government to go out and say, hi, how are you? And I don't know how that works, but just today, we're looking at the abandoned RV program, correct? Now, you said you're going to apply a grant through Metro. When will that be applied for, and when will we hear?
That is being led through code enforcement. The draft of the application is already prepared. I'm not sure if it's been submitted. It should be submitted very soon. I don't know a timeline on when we will hear back, but I can
Does
certainly
anybody in the room know what the timeline is on that? No, we don't. Okay, so go forward with Godspeed on that, and let's get this program up and running, and let's get these awful, unsightly vehicles off our county roads. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Do you have any closing comments?
No, ma'am.
Good.
Thank you.
We'll come back to you with an update, Commissioners, on the infrastructure plan and then ultimately the funding. So if we don't secure the grants, the question is, do you want to use general fund or not? But that's a
Well, we'll
question
deal
for
with
another
that
day.
when we,
Another day for that question.
thank you very much, Gary.
Okay, thank you. Next item is Supportive Housing Services Progress Report. Rod Cook and Vahid Brown will present. There was a memo in your packet. Come on up, please. Go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. We'll get right to it and have Vahid, our resident expert on this, do his presentation.
Thank you, Rod. I'm Vahid Brown, Supportive Housing Services Program Manager with the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. I'm here to present an update on Supportive Housing Services Program implementation corresponding with our Q3 report. The quarterly reports detailing the progress of the measure are required by the measure 45 days after the end of every quarter. So coming up to mid-May, we'll be submitting our Q3 report, and I just want to present to you the highlights of that report. And I'll just jump right through and give you a summary of the report and the outcomes that we're celebrating today. So in current programs and services, we continue to support the Serenity and Haven House programs. These are 20 units of mental health, behavioral health, transitional housing for folks exiting incarceration who would otherwise be experiencing homelessness and have behavioral health needs. Through a work with the Central City Concern Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program, we've opened another pathway into entry into those beds. We were noticing underutilization. Folks, aren't meeting the eligibility criteria at discharge from incarceration, so those beds were being underutilized. We have folks that are justice involved that are experiencing homelessness that are worked with by LEAD, the Central City Concern Program, so we've done some matchmaking to increase bed utilization at those programs. That's happened in this third quarter. The emergency shelter program continues. That's funded through leveraged federal funds through this board's decision to support the reallocation of what was initially committed from SHS funds to that program to be spent elsewhere in new services. That was at 65 beds at the end of the third quarter. We have 5 program providers. 2 of them are culturally specific agencies assisting with the 2 related program areas of housing navigation and placement. So that's moving folks who are experiencing homelessness from the street and from motel shelter into permanent housing. And then supportive services case management. That's the case management services that follows that household when they get into permanent housing and provides them ongoing supportive services. So those 2 together, navigating someone into permanent housing, that's 1. 2, they get a regional long-term rent assistance voucher. That's ongoing rent assistance from our program. And 3, supportive housing case management. Now, those 3 together, that constitutes permanent supportive housing. So as we know, this measure is focused on ending chronic homelessness. Ending chronic homelessness means permanent supportive housing. That's the ticket. That's the secret sauce to ending chronic homelessness for folks in our county. I want to share a statistic, not in this report, that's really of near and dear to my heart and to my teams. In 2019, I shared with the board and with the county that at our current stock of permanent supportive housing, the wait list at that time for people who are chronically homeless and need permanent supportive housing, at the rate that we were moving people into permanent supportive housing with that wait list at that time in 2019, it would have taken us 22 years to clear the wait list. We were seeing between 12 and 30 permanent supportive housing placements a year. We had over 500 people on wait lists. This week, we passed 100 placements of permanent supportive housing from this program in 7 months. That's just a big deal.
It is a big deal.
We went from 10 to 20 placements a year to 100 in 7 months. So we're on track to really make a difference for the really most vulnerable people in Clackamas County. Moving on, just a side note, just something I wanted to share. Used to be these updates were doom and gloom. This is just the lack of resources, the huge need. Anyway, program and system development, the report moves on to detailing the progress in Q3 on building out our infrastructure for delivery of these services. We hired an additional management analyst for the HMIS, that's the Homeless Management Information Data System. And we began recruitments in the Q3 for an additional contracts analyst. He's since been hired in this current quarter. And 4 program coordinators to coordinate the nonprofit providers of these services. Those are currently in interviews. The final interview for first round is next week, so making good progress there. The staff and the Regional Long-Term Rent Assistance Program and Supportive Housing Services have continued to refine and develop training processes for our partners in data reporting, in case management, the provision of services. We've sped up the process for the payment of security deposits. We used to do one check cut every 2 weeks. Now we're doing them at least weekly so that landlords that are hesitant to rent to a very vulnerable household, I don't know if I'm going to get my check, and so we'll get it to you this week. So we've been able to speed that up. In terms of moving on to the next kind of category of the report, advancing racial equity, one of the focuses in our local implementation plan to do this in Clackamas County to reduce disparities for people of color in our homeless services system has been to expand the partnerships with culturally specific providers. So in the Q3, we continue to work closely with Greater New Hope Family Services, new to Clackamas County this year, and El Programa Hispanico Católico, also new to Housing Services in Clackamas County. Also, we've concluded a procurement in this quarter. We're moving into contract negotiations this week that will bring 3 additional culturally specific providers to the county. So 3 more, the Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization, Native American Youth and Family Center, and Up and Over. So we're expanding our relationships and partnerships with culturally specific service providers, which is great progress. Financial summary, disbursements from the Supportive Housing Services measure significantly increased during the Q3. We received $4.8 million in disbursements in that quarter, which is the vast majority of the $5.7 million received thus far this year. So we're now seeing, we're anticipating the majority of the funding for the fiscal year to be coming in this quarter. But we did start to see that really jump up at the end of the Q3. Expenditures, about half of the overall expenditures this year have occurred in the Q3. So we really started to ramp into full implementation in the Q3. So of the $2.1 million spent so far, $1.05 million was spent in the Q3, so about half. So that the rate of expenditure is increasing as program deployment is increasing. The good stuff, program outcomes. 246 households have been served by the Supportive Housing Services Program through the Q3. These are not to date, these are through the Q3. So that number I shared with you that this week we passed 100 households in permanent supportive housing. This report noted 68 placements into permanent supportive housing. So we're placing people quite quickly. So from the end of March to now, we've gone from 68 to over 100. We're also seeing a more diverse population, which is great. We want to see more folks who are people of color who are maybe not in our coordinated entry system, but because of our relationships with culturally specific providers, we saw that the total population that we're serving in these programs who were people of color increased from 19% at the beginning of the program implementation to 23% now. And there's also outcome numbers by service type in the progress report. I'm not going to read that chart, but that's available in Figure 2. It shows the numbers of people receiving regional long-term rent assistance vouchers, the numbers of people matched with services for navigation and placement and for case management services, as well as those sheltering in transitional and emergency shelter. Looking ahead, we're going to be issuing a request for information for safety off the streets programs, as you know. I'm meeting today with County Council and Procurement to finalize that document for release. And as I said, our 6 procurements that we conducted in this quarter concluded. We're negotiating contracts starting today, and we expect to commit $6.175 million to those 6 new program areas. So that concludes my update and summary of our Q3 report.
Thank you very much, Vahid. This is quite the report. We have several commissioners who would like to make comments. Commissioner Schrader, you're up.
Yeah, I want to thank you for all you've done, Fahid. This is pretty remarkable at this point to see the deficit that we have with not being able to house people, to finally get them moving in here. And I know the money's coming in. Does it look as if we're going to get the full 24 to 32 million by, what was it, June? Or do you think we're on target to get that?
So far, so good. We'll see in another week and a half.
Okay,
Our big one, our April one, should be quite significant.
Okay, good. That's one of the things that we were, and that I was worried about. So hopefully, if we get that, then I will definitely admit publicly I had egg on my face in that I'm glad it's coming in the way it's supposed to come in so we can do this kind of work. The other thing is that, are we getting this information to that Here Together group? Occasionally I get emails from them, and it seems to be Portland-centric, and it would be nice if they would actually take some of the things that we're doing out in our area, the UG, within the UGB, to get them front and center as well, because we got pretty beat up by not, supposedly getting on time and everything, and we basically needed to get the infrastructure going. We needed to take our time. We needed to, make sure that if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. And obviously, it's great we are doing it right. So I would like to just suggest you contact them and they get some of our information out to the rest of the world out there. That Clackamas County is doing a stellar job. And then the third thing is this helping us free up anything else for our rural areas as well? Is that kind of part of what's been happening? Because I know that this is just within the UGB, which is critically important because it's a huge issue, but we also have those issues out in the Estacadas, the Malalas, the Cambys, the Sandys. So
yes.
How are we doing with that? Can you give us any information about that?
Yes, on the second point, I am communicating regularly with Here Together and sharing information about our progress on the reprogramming of available dollars. So we had, prior to SHS, about $8 million a year total for homeless services from the federal, state, and local dollars. That had to stretch over the whole county. Now we've got, 24 to 35 to eventually $45 million a year coming from Metro's measure that will focus on the UGB. So that $8 million can be, all of those dollars can now be focused. They can be prioritized for expenditure in the rural areas.
Okay.
So that is the work of the coming fiscal year. That will be part of a planning effort that we will be conducting as a part of a reorganization of housing services delivery in Health, Housing, and Human Services. So yes.
Well, thank you. Wouldn't have been a success without you and Rod. I really appreciate everything you've done, because it was hard to get the eggs thrown at us, but like I said, I'm glad I'm taking them, and I deserve them evidently, so there you go. Oh, it's okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Schrader. Commissioner Savas, you're up next.
Yeah, well, I differ a little bit, Commissioner Schrader. I don't think we have egg on our face. The measure and the process and the plan was to impose the tax in the year 2020, and the documents support that. They didn't impose a tax until 2021, so they were a year late, and so is the revenue. So that's not on us. That's on, Metro and the group that steered that. I don't know why they didn't impose a tax on time, but they didn't. So that's not our fault. So, Vahid, great work. I am wondering, as I was making notes, and I read the report last night, there are people that are being displaced and ending up on the streets because of economics. There are people that are being displaced that also might be economics that either have drug, alcohol, or substance abuse problems. And the idea obviously is to transition them, to get them back on their feet and up and running. And so with the price of housing is not coming down, I think more and more people will be economically displaced that don't have drug, alcohol challenges, right, or mental health challenges. So what are we doing on the tracking to determine what, a person, protecting their privacy, of course, but a person we're tracking to see what the trends are, so we can understand where we're going to be in short time when the money, if this measure doesn't get reinstated by the voters when it runs out. We have a lot of people that might be permanently on the dole, if you will, of the supportive measure services and have no place to go. So I'm just wondering how successful we're going to be and if we're tracking that. Can you speak to that a little bit? I have one other question as well after that.
Yes, Commissioner. We currently do track that in a sense, right? So the HMIS system and our coordinated entry system is capable of giving a snapshot of inflow and outflow. So new entries to homelessness in a given year, exits from homelessness in a given year, gives us the balance. Are there more people being displaced from their housing than being placed into housing, or vice versa? But more significantly, we've joined the Built for Zero initiative with Community Solutions. 4 members of my team are there in Chicago today for a conference. And the Built for Zero is an initiative, a nationwide initiative, also being joined by Multnomah County and Washington County. It's other counties in Oregon have taken, I think Lane County is ahead of us by a couple of years. It's really focused on this question, on the data management and understanding on a real time, not in a kind of an annual look back, but a real time way inflow to outflow. So we can track that in a more constant and quality data way that doesn't require that we rely on the information of people who self-select by calling us or reaching out and saying, I'm in a housing crisis, I need help. We have their information because they've contacted us. Built for Zero allows us to track a broader group of folks, again, respecting their privacy through a quality by name list, it's called, which doesn't require that a person reach out to us. It requires extensive outreach capabilities to identify people experiencing homelessness and make sure that they're on our list. And that's what that procurement that I just mentioned is going to do. We're going to be issuing 4 contracts for outreach and engagement. So that's my answer to your first question.
Okay. The last one, and this goes really to the money, and I've asked our staff to reach out to Metro and the tax collector for this. This happens to be the city of Portland. Most of us, I think, know that. And what I'm trying to find out, and I've had a number of conversations with people who just discovered that they didn't pay the tax and they're subject to the tax. So a lot of the money we're seeing, or some of the money we're seeing, I think it's safe, some of the money we're going to be seeing or seeing right now is actually back taxes. So I've asked our staff to ask Portland to give us a breakdown of the collected taxes, how much of it is back taxes, how much of it's the ongoing and up to date. Okay. I do know that the tax software financial institutions are now realizing, who of their clients are subject to the tax. So there's a lot of catch up. So you might see a big flow of money, but we're not going to be able to discern if that money is going to be the ongoing versus how much of it is backed, should have been paid last year or 2021, the business tax especially perhaps. And then what that stream might look like if they pay monthly or if they're going to be paying annually at the end of their fiscal year. Businesses have different fiscal years. They're not necessarily calendar. They're not necessarily on any certain month. So I think it's going to be important so that we don't plan on a stream of money and overestimate what that really is when all the dust settles. And I do know that we've had discussions with some of the finance directors for Metro and ourselves, and discussions saying we won't really know what the steady stream is going to be until 2023 or 4. But I think we can at least find out what the back taxes are to try to help get an idea what that looks like. Any thoughts or any communication? Are you familiar with that request?
No, other than to say I think that's a great question for the financial review team, the FRT, the CFOs of the 4 jurisdictions to look at. I don't know if that's on their agenda to look at, but Elizabeth Comfort is a member of the FRT.
Yep. I think all the elected should, again, not get infatuated with all that big bunch of money and say, okay, we're in a budget for all this money when we might just see that anomaly of that big flow of cash.
Mm-hmm. Get the cash flow right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Yeah, a few things really stand out to me in this report, and the navigation case management piece is just so critical for meeting people's individual needs and getting them into permanent supportive housing. And it so shows with the level of support that's been increased. So hats off. This is not an easy thing to do in a time when we're struggling with the workforce shortages and nonprofits are having a hard time staffing, and this is some incredible success. And so congratulations there. I have a question. I don't know if you say, oh, Commissioner Fisher, don't ask me this now, I'm going to have to get back to you. It's totally fine. But the press has reported the preliminary numbers of the homeless count that we just did. And I can't recall if our actual numbers were 597 or 546 or something. What was that?
587.
Oh, 587. Commissioner Scholl has it in his memory there. And I know that those counts are always challenging when you look at the numbers. And then we usually pair them with numbers through the school district for how many families have children that are unsheltered and all of that. But a couple questions as these conversations are going on is I recall when I volunteered to do the homeless count, we would find out where people were from before they were homeless, and we would track all that information. Is that information going to be tracked and reported to us from this most recent homeless count?
I'm going to have to unfortunately
Okay,
say
that's
that
okay.
that is a question that is usually a part of the survey instrument. So I just need to confirm that that was, because the numbers that were shared with the press were just the top line numbers, right? But other information is asked in the survey instrument. And typically that has included the question you're asking about. Were you experiencing homelessness before you came to this area or that kind of thing? And we were able to track that data point. So I will follow up.
Okay, I'll be really interested in that. So our number's 586, Commissioner Scholl?
87.
587. Thank you. What were our numbers of unsheltered in our homeless count in 2019? Was it?
The unsheltered was in the 900 range.
It was more.
Yeah, so the numbers in the process was pretty much the same as to you get all the volunteers, you go out, you go through the same process.
Yeah, there's the difference in 2019 was that we did a longer count. So the HUD requires the date that is chosen that's asked about. Where will you sleep or where did you sleep on January X? And then they require that the survey be conducted for at least a week in conjunction with that date. Clackamas County in the past has done a longer local report, we call it, and you referred to the schools data. That's how we would report out in previous years. This year, the 2022 pit count was just a HUD type count with the 1 week. So we had, in the 1 week of the count this year, slightly more folks doing counting than in the 1 week in 2019. But if you look at the 3 weeks in 2019, there were more folks involved.
Okay, that's really helpful. And I just wanted to clarify one piece. I believe Commissioner Savas said that the tax should have been being collected in 2020. And I'll never forget this campaign because I was really involved in it, calling people and campaigning across the region for this measure. It was totally during the beginning of the pandemic. We voted on it in May of 2020. That's when it passed. So it would not have been possible to build the bureaucratic infrastructure to collect the tax in 2020. Just wanted to.
Well, actually, it could have been done retroactively, but they chose to make it 2021. You could have passed it prior and made it retroactive to 2020. They chose not to do that.
Well, I do know it was passed May of 2020. I remember the victory party over Zoom. It was very strange. So thank you for that.
Okay, Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, good morning. Mr. Brown, Mr. Cook, thanks for all the hard work you and your staff have done in taking care of our homeless. I appreciate your compassion. We're making progress. I'm very anxious to see the results of your request for informations from potential partners in the county and the region on the Safely Off the Streets program. That's going to be very exciting. And I hope the word gets out to potential partners out there that, you know, we're looking for those 5 different paradigms of supportive housing. As you know, there's pressure on the supportive housing measure to amend it to require the counties to spend 75% of supportive housing funds, SHS funds, on emergency housing. We want to keep our flexibility to handle Clackamas County the way we see fit. So something I would like the Housing Authority to keep in mind is that as we expand our service providers, hopefully, that we're very critical on the amount or the percentage of supportive housing dollars that go to administration, and with an eye to keep as much as we can going to rubber meets the road type projects. So I appreciate that, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other questions or comments for the presenters on this report? I want to thank you very much for all the work that's gone into this. We've learned a lot. Our programs are ready to go as soon as we get more money, and I think that's a wise way to spend our money and implement this program. Thank you very much, staff, for coming forward today.
Thank you, Chair.
Gary, what's up next?
Thank you. Next, Commissioners, staff would like to revisit with you short-term rentals, which you discussed last week. Stephen Madcore, County Counsel, has a memo for your consideration in your packet, which he will discuss with you now.
Go ahead, Stephen. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Chair. Stephen Madcore, County Counsel. I think the term revisit is appropriate because just last week, the board voted to delay the implementation of a currently existing program, which is found in Chapter 8.10 of the County Code, and that concerns short-term rentals. And the motion was to delay implementation until July 1st, 2023, and direct that staff devote no additional time to the program itself. And in retrospect, I have made a recommendation to the board that they consider having two public hearings, or at least one anyway, on considering repealing Chapter 8.10 in its entirety and putting it basically in a file cabinet until such time as the board has desire to implement the program either in earnest or in a pared down version. But what you would currently have for the next year based on your current motion, which did pass, was to have this on the books, have this be the law countywide, but have the county have no implementation plan in existence at all because it is not funded, and your staff have stated that it's going to require at least 2 FTEs to do that. So what the proposal would do that I'm proposing is that you have it scheduled for a public hearing, and like any other ordinance, if it were to be a repeal, it'd be 2 hearings, 13 days apart. You would hear from your constituents on whether they wanted to move it forward, to keep it in place, to fund it, not fund it, to have it pared down. And if there was no opposition, if the board felt comfortable with it, you could basically table this until such time as you had an implementation plan. As it stands, you have law on the books that the county does not enforce, and that, I submit, is an untenable position for us to be in. Here to answer any questions the board might have. I would say if you were to say yes to this, then it would go to the public process. We would have 2 public hearings in which folks would be able to comment on the legitimacy of this path forward.
Okay, commissioners, ready for comments? I see a couple commissioners up. Commissioner Savas, then Commissioner Scholl, and then Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, well, just knowing how much effort and time committed, the board discussed this with our staff and with the prior board when this first came up. We haven't had that same level of discussion to fully vet it and understand where we all were and all the opportunities. So I maintain that, there could be some more thoughtful discussion coming forward, and that's the hearing. If that's what we decide to do, then great. But I'll just make sure that we fully understand it in a way. So what I'm getting at is that, number one, this started because there was the demand for to make short-term rentals legal. And there was also a demand or an interest in collecting the transient room tax for that. So there were a couple drivers for this. And, I know that I personally landed on we should make it legal. We shouldn't be the tax collectors for the TRT. That's really up for maybe the tourism to do. That shouldn't be a burden on the general fund or our staff. But I was not in favor of the fee. But we certainly had a lot of neighbors, and still, even since our discussion on Wednesday, Wednesday morning. A lot of people have called very upset because they were hoping that the county would at least implement some enforcement for some of the neighborhood complaint quality of life issues for some of the operators of short-term rentals that are probably not doing it so responsible. I'm assuming that most of the operators of short-term rentals are good people, they're maintaining it, they're doing well, they're screening their people, and there's not any neighborhood issues. However, that's not the full the case, and that's been one of the challenges. And so in the interest of that, I thought maybe if it was funded, the enforcement was funded based on the fines for those abuses, that might be a way to sustain the cost without burdening the taxpayers. So I would like to see something where we pare down some elements in 8.1 that strike the registration fee, that strike some of those things, and pare it down to where it is a enforceable ordinance on some of the things that we did do. We did do a lot of good work. I think we put a lot of things together. I don't want to throw that out the window. And I think there's just too many, there's more constituents out there that have been impacted by these. And we know who they are because they're part of the public record. And I heard from some of them that are waiting for us to do something. So I think it'd be irresponsible to throw all that effort, time, and money out the window. So I would like to get as much bang out of this as we can by paring down some elements 8.1.
Commissioner Scholl, you're up.
Yes, I want to see the people of Clackamas County have the ability to continue with short-term rentals, to increase income where that's possible. I don't want to see our bureaucracy grow to support this, and I don't want to see new regulations to burden the people of Clackamas County. So I think the idea from the county attorney to proceed with the 2 public hearings is a great idea, and I urge this board to get that first public hearing scheduled as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chair Smith. I think it makes sense for us to wait until we see what it's in LUBA right now, is that right? That was appealed, this zoning, and it's with the courts they will issue an opinion within the year?
It's at the Court of Appeals, and that concerns the zoning and development ordinance, correct?
Okay, so in my mind, it makes sense for us to wait and not do further implementation until we see the outcome of that. But I'm with Commissioner Savas on this, that the work that was done was good. It struck a balance between all of the competing interests, and it's important when we have housing as one of our key supplies, and making sure that we have some guideposts around the short-term rental process is important, so that the people in the the unincorporated urban areas are able to use their short-term rentals or their homes for short-term rentals, but also that these houses are not just monetized for income for short-term rentals, so that they're also utilized by the resident, that resident either lives there or lives there at least more than half of the year. So if my understanding is if we put it all on the shelf and got rid of it, then all of those important guideposts would go away with it.
That's not entirely true. There still is the allowance for short-term rentals, correct?
Well, I'm talking about the owner, not owner-occupied, but owner-resident-owned.
You're talking about the program itself, which
Yes.
would be included in Chapter 8.10, which is a program that isn't enforced, so that's on paper, on paper only. So you could have people within that area renting out their property in a manner that's not consistent with 8.10, because we don't have any oversight, overview, or implementation mechanism. That's just it. It's relatively, I don't want to say meaningless. It looks good on paper, but that's really about it.
Okay, Commissioner Schrader, you're up.
Yeah, that was my question. There's no way to implement this. Would we still have an ordinance that at least made it legal? Or is that
Yeah.
something we would hear? That's kind of what.
Commissioner Schrader, that's a point that Commissioner Fisher was talking about.
Right.
In the ZDO, we did provide for it because it was
Right.
beforehand non-existent there as well. So we provided for it. There was an appeal to LUBA. LUBA overruled that. It's at the Court of Appeals, but regardless of what the Court of Appeals does with that, we feel very strongly that it's very likely that we'll be able to allow for short-term rentals in the urban areas and the RRFF5 areas. This appeal concerns resource property, resource lands, not the more urbanized
Okay.
areas. And we're not enforcing that component of the code right now either.
So if we were to table this, we tabling all of it or part of it? I'm just trying to understand, because I'm,
Right. If you were to not do anything today, the motion that you had from last week saying this whole thing is tabled, basically semi-freezed until next year with staff doing no further action on it.
and we can just table it and call it good.
We already did that last week, Commissioner
But
Schrader.
with a date, we bring it back.
Okay, so,
So I don't really want to bring this back. So
If you go to the public hearing, it's coming back. It'll come back
Okay.
twice. If you go to the table, which is the motion that you had last week, and it comes back in July, it's still coming back. But in the interim, what you have is you have a law on the books in the county that Commissioner Fisher likes, that Commissioner Savas likes, that some of the constituents like, but nobody enforces it.
Right.
So it's powerless, because if they were to call the county, we'd say, we do not have a program in place to
Okay.
implement this and make this operative yet.
yes.
So it was a lot of good work by staff and the board, but it's one of those points, don't put it on the books unless you're prepared to have people comply with it and abide by it and have the county enforce it. And that's where we are right
Okay.
now.
Got it. All right.
Gary, how many FTE is it going to take to implement this program?
Staff is recommending and advising it'll take 2 full-time employees to do this work.
And we don't know whether we're going to have enough collections coming in to support that or not.
That is correct.
Okay. Commissioners, I'm going to recommend we support our attorney's recommendation to do this program. And right now, I will accept a motion to repeal Chapter 810 relating to short-term rentals.
So moved.
Well,
I'll second the motion. The motion has been made to accept, repeal Chapter 810 relating to short-term rentals. I have seconded. We will open it for discussion. Commissioner Schrader.
yeah, I'm just going to say I think it's time to put this to bed. I don't see any reason why at some point we couldn't revisit it. It will be somewhere on a shelf in any case, but if we don't have an opportunity to enforce it, we're putting ourselves in a really bad spot. There's just no way we can.
Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Well, there's a way to get there. There's a will, where there's a will, there's a way. There's a way to get this, and I think where we got hung up, Commissioner Schrader, is that some of us wanted to, I was not one of them, but some of the board wanted to pose a pretty hefty registration fee,
Yeah.
and that's where we got stuck. I don't support the heavy registration fee, but I don't support burdening the county or the taxpayers with trying to enforce something without any recovery of those dollars. I think that's where a fining system should be the way to get there. But I certainly don't want to see all that effort and time that we spent wasted. So I won't be supporting this morning, but I do agree, frankly, with the point that I forgot to make that Commissioner Fisher made, and that is that we should probably really wait for the Court of Appeals decision so that everything's on the table, and then they'll give us time to absorb what it is we're trying to do and hear from our constituents. We can hear from them if we have a hearing. So my question of clarification is this. Is the motion not to have the hearing and simply repeal it?
You need 2 public hearings to repeal.
Okay.
Okay.
This
So
would be
what
to go.
happens is we do the motion and then we set a time for public hearings, correct, Stephen?
Correct. It'd go to a public hearing, and we'd have 2 of them, like I said, 13 days apart, and you'd have plenty of opportunity for public input during that time period. You might have something from the Court of Appeals. It's doubtful, but I would submit those are 2 separate tracks. They're standalone provisions.
Yep, it does seem worthwhile to wait for the decision by the Court of Appeals.
There's 2 separate tracks, you just said.
I understand that.
Okay. Commissioner, I'm not sure who was next. Joel? Go ahead.
Yes, I encourage my fellow commissioners to support this motion this morning. This motion, if passed, will clean up the situation. We'll have opportunity to hear from our constituents on the pros and cons of short-term rentals and regulations of them. And we get this Chapter 8.1 cleaned up, and we don't wait around for the Court of Appeals, which could take a long, long time. Thank you.
Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Yeah, I understand what Commissioner Savas is saying, that we could thread this needle in a more constructive way, and that's what I support. I am concerned about the amount of time 2 public hearings are going to take, the effort, the staff time, the expense. I would rather see us wait until, I mean, I don't know, Stephen, could it take a super long time for the Court of Appeals? What are we looking at?
Unpredictable. It's supposed to be faster with LUBA matters. Unpredictable. They're backlogged. Everything's taking longer these days. Supply chain.
Okay.
That's a good one. That's a good, right?
I love that answer. I don't, and you don't ever want to give it definite because it might not be true. So I'm going to be a no on this as well, given the level of input that we had and the way that we thread that ZDO was very thoughtful, and those way the guideposts for short-term rentals was good policy. I encourage Commissioner Schull and Chair Smith to review and look at those public hearings that we had, because they were very good. But regardless, I can see how this vote's going to go with Commissioner Schrader just not wanting to, as she says, to put it to bed. But I will be a no today.
Thank you. And Commissioners, we still have more business before us today. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I listened with intently to Commissioner Scholl's comments. So if the purpose of your motion is to revisit it and change it and adjust it, maybe I would make a friendly amendment that we don't use the word repeal and say review or revise. We have a hearing to revise the ordinance. That I would support. You get my vote. But if it's to repeal, I think the public message out there is that we're going to throw everything out the window. And I think you'll hear from people. We'll all hear.
Oh, good. I hope we do, because there has been statements made today. We have all these phone calls that came in. I just asked Administrator, we've had no phone calls come into the office. I have received emails. Why are you doing this? The little amount of income that I get on this is really problematic, of charging almost $900 for a registration fee that will soon be, the cost to do this program is burdensome, I think, on the people who own the properties. I think, Commissioners, I had heard once that you had 24 meetings on short-term rentals. I think, Gary, maybe you told 24 meetings, and you talk about staff time being exhausted and the amount of money it costs for staff time to do this. And because we're here today finally going to repeal it, all these other new ideas have come in when these ideas could have come in before. And I do think it's a property right that in certain zones, people can do this right now. I think a lot of diversions have been raised to try to kill this. I think we just need to repeal this, have the hearings, and go forward. Commissioner, I'm not sure. Commissioner Schull, were you up?
Yes. The motion is to repeal Chapter 8.1, hear from our constituents in 2 public hearings, and at the end of those 2 public hearings, we can assess where we're at. But right now, all the commissioners have heard pros and cons from constituents across the county on short-term rentals. And a yes on this morning's motion will give them opportunity to make their comments to the board, and we'll get this thing cleaned up. I encourage you to vote yes on the motion.
Okay, we've about exhausted everything we need to say. It's going to be time to vote. I will entertain a motion. I will call for a vote at this time. Tony?
Yes, Madam Chair. Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Schull?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
It's not clear to me what the intent is. I'm going to abstain.
Commissioner Fisher?
No.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 311. Thank you very much. Stephen?
Oh, Chair
Stephen,
Smith, can I make my comment?
just a moment. Let me finish the business and you can comment. Who goes ahead and sets a hearing date? Tony, and you do that together, is that
Ye-
correct?
Yes, Chair, that's correct.
Okay, all righty.
I can officially say that short-term rentals are the most prickly topic this board has seen and the prior board has seen in a number of years.
Okay, let's do this after budget. Thank you very much. Well, you can't set it before then anyway. Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Smith. I just wanted to let the board, our new board, know that the reason why there was so much community engagement is that our staff engaged the public extensively on this issue to come up with the best threading the needle for that ZDO. So that's why they were engaged, they were involved in that.
Okay, thank you very much. Gary, what's up next?
Next, your business meeting agenda review for this Thursday, May 12, 2022. You have a long consent agenda that you approved today, and you'll hear an election update from County Clerk Sherry Hall. If you have any questions on any items on the agenda, please let me know by this Thursday. Next, advisory board and commission appointments. Tony, go ahead, please.
Okay, I have a question for Gary.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Fisher had a question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Gary. I'm not sure I know there are many concerns about what happened with the elections. I appreciate the statement that Chair Smith, that I read in our Clatco News, so thank you, Chair Smith. What would be our best process, since this is happening Thursday and today's the end of today, if we have a series of questions, I know that I do, that I want to get to Sherry Hall. I'm interested, just briefly.
Well, I'll tell you what has been planned, if you don't mind. Sherry Hall is going to come, and she's going to sit at the side dais with Stephen Madcore, and she's going to give her report. I have submitted 5 questions to her. I would like her to address. Any other commissioner may submit questions to her as well. She will come right before citizen communication, and she will sit here during the citizen communication. If anybody else has questions to ask her, then she can answer that. As we know, Sherry Hall is an independent elected official who manages the elections, and we do not. So at that time, she will be available. Commissioner Fisher, if you or any other of my commissioners would like to submit questions to her, I would suggest, as you give her the courtesy of letting her have the questions ahead of time so she can prepare as I did. I would also encourage all of my commissioners to go down to the viewing room at the elections office to see how they are dealing with the duplicate ballots in this case, and even look at some of the ballots yourself, as I have. You know, some of the ballots you can't tell can't be scanned. You can't tell with the naked eye, and some you can see. So, is that okay?
Well, let me make just a couple comments. While Sherry Hall is an independently elected official, so are each of us, all 5 of us. And with all due respect, Chair Smith, we are not your commissioners. We are independently elected. I would really like to see something coordinated. I'm not sure how we do that, since now is our last meeting before Thursday, or if we could carve out some time Wednesday. But Chair Smith, I would like to see your questions. I have some serious concerns about what is the quality control? What is the process? Is there if the printing company did mess up, is Sherry Hall looking at instigating a lawsuit against the printing company? What will be the extra costs of us deploying more staff? I have some serious questions. I would like them to be coordinated with fellow commissioners. I have not seen Chair Smith's questions. I'm not sure what our process should be. Maybe you could, Gary, you could provide some support and advice on this.
I would recommend either you can individually email Sherry Hall directly, or I'll ask one of the policy advisors to coordinate if you want to send all your questions to a single person in our office, that we can compile them together and then send them to Sherry. But I do agree with Chair Smith, if we can give Sherry advance notice, so we're not just blindsiding her on Thursday.
That was my interest as well.
And you brought up some good questions that had been discussed, and I would suggest you go ahead and submit them to Gary, or just submit them to
Just send them to me. How about Commissioner, send them to me, and I'll ask one of our staff to compile them, and we'll give them all to Sherry at once. If you could please do that, if by the end of today, if possible, or early tomorrow, so we can give Sherry time.
And I'm sure we've all been thinking about this. Okay, Gary, what's up next?
Okay, thank you. Next, advisory boards and commission appointments. Tony, go ahead, please.
Madam Chair, there are 3 appointed boards and commissions that need recommendations this morning. The first is the Clackamas County Health Council under the Health, Housing, and Human Services Department. Through a recruitment process, one application was received and one application is being recommended. The recommendation is Liliana Lewis, who would be appointed to her first term.
I'll accept the motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion has been made to appointment for the Community Health Council by Commissioner Shaw. It's been seconded by Commissioner Fisher. Any further discussion? Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
All right, motion passes 5-0.
Yeah, and Chair Smith, just to clarify for the minutes, I made the motion and it was seconded.
Oh,
So,
okay, thank you. Correction? The correction stands. Go ahead. Tony,
Next.
what's up next?
Yes, ma'am. Next is the Developmental Disabilities Council, staffed by Health, Housing, and Human Services. Through a recruitment process, 2 applications are received, 2 are recommended to be appointed. Recommendation is Sarah Schwartz to a first term and Colleen Johnston to a first term.
I move to appoint.
second?
Commissioner Schrader has moved to appoint Sarah Schwartz and Colleen Johnston to the Developmental Disabilities Council, and Commissioner Fisher has seconded that motion. Any further discussion on this? I'm having a heck of a time with this iPad. I tell you, it shuts off every 5 seconds. I mean, this is making me absolutely crazy during this business meeting. So may I have a call poll, please?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Tony, what's up next?
The Planning Commission, staffed by the Department of Transportation and Development, currently has 2 openings. Through a recruitment process, 5 applications were received. 2 are being recommended for reappointment. Recommendation is Gerald Murphy and Louise Lopes. Both would be a second term.
So moved.
Commissioner Fisher has moved for the reappointment of Louise Lopes and Gerald Murphy. Commissioner Savas has seconded the motion to the Planning Commission. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, please call the poll.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Tony.
Final item today, Chair Smith, is Commissioner Communications.
Commissioners, let's see, Commissioner Savas, we'll have you go first.
I'll be really brief. Received a lot of phone calls about libraries and short-term rentals. That concludes my comments for today.
Commissioner Schrader, you're up.
Thank you. I'm assuming I will get a number of calls about short-term rentals, so give me a ring. Y'all got my number. I do want to clarify, I'm in full support of a library for Gladstone and for the folks in Oak Grove. Evidently, there has been some, I guess, misunderstandings out there. I did leave a message for Tammy Semple about that. So if there are misunderstandings, you can also get me on the phone, either here at work or I think my cell phone's pretty much out there. So that's what I have, other than I had a great Mother's Day with good friends, and I hope all of us here had, all of us moms here, the 3 of us, had a good Mother's Day.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, I attended, listened to, I guess is the best way to frame it, the Child Care Task Force last evening. They're coming along. There's a nonprofit, there are staff from the county, there are child care providers, there are parents, part of this effort to really look at the child care desert and solutions in Clackamas County. I should have taken pictures of the presentation that Ernest gave because he had some very interesting data, and I wanted to tell you that today, but I didn't take pictures and I didn't get the data. But it's over $1 billion industry in Clackamas County. We are not meeting the need. There are many children that don't have access to child care, and seeing those numbers out there from the analysis is very eye-opening. So I'm hoping there can be at some point, I'm not sure, Chair Smith, when the appropriate time for the board to be briefed fully on it will be, but at some point as they get farther along, having that information, I think, will be useful for us to understand what's happening on that issue.
Okay, finished?
Yep.
Commissioner Shaw.
Yes, on Saturday evening, I attended the Vietnam Memorial event in Hillsborough, where former Secretary of Defense James Mattis spoke. The project requires $3.5 million to complete. They currently have about $1 million, so they're short about 2.5. And I encourage folks to go to the Vietnam War Memorial Fund.org, look at the beautiful project they have planned, and consider donating to this project that will be very meaningful to the family who lost the 700 military personnel from Oregon in the Vietnam War. Also, last Thursday, Commissioner Savas and I were on the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee meeting. We received the update on the research justice study of Clackamas County that's being done by the Coalition of Communities of Color, and I encourage people to go on the county website under C4, Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, look at the meeting from last Thursday. You'll see a video on there that includes a brief and the slides from the study. Please take a look at that. And also, I shared a couple videos with my policy advisor and asked her to circulate that to our housing authority folks and the other commissioners. That's a video on a project that Austin, Texas did that incorporates all 5 of the paradigms that we're looking at in our Safely Off the Streets RFI. It's very interesting. It's encouraging. Maybe there's some things we can learn there. Maybe there's some things we can teach Austin, Texas about what we're doing. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. I spent a good portion of last Friday talking with Sherry Hall, observing the process, walking through the elections department down there, and I encourage all commissioners to do that. I put out a statement on recommendation of staff to get out in front of that, and I still will maintain she is an independent elected official, and any action that we take here will probably, unless it's funding to go forward or a legal matter, she needs to correct what needs to be corrected. I believe she is. She's coming forward and has agreed to talk. And it's very educational. So commissioners, it would help, I think, if you would go down there and take the time, as I did on most of Friday afternoon, and talk to people who come in and answer their questions and see what's really going on. I also called the Secretary of State and to get her take on what's going on. And Shemia Fagan said this is what's allowed for in law on the correction of damaged ballots, and these ballots are considered damaged. So unless you want to see something more profound done with damaged ballots, that would require the Oregon legislature, as I said in my statement that was released. Yes, this is just a very touchy situation, and like I say, I was shocked and aghast when I found out, as you probably were too. So with that in mind, no further business before this commission. We are adjourned. Thank you.